Hello and welcome back, and today we're going to continue looking at the QSAN NAS I've got here, the XN8008T or the X-Cube NAS. Now if you do hear a hum there in the background, this is quite a closed environment I'm in, and the QSAN is a little closer to the mic than I would like. Unfortunately there's nothing I can do about that, so I do apologise if there's those noises in the background. Now with the QSAN, what we're going to talk about today is generally the graphical user interface open to you when you want to configure and tinker with your NAS. This is the NAS that we set up in my previous video, and I've set it up with 4 SED, that's self-encrypted drives, and these drives inside have been inset with an encrypted password to show you guys just how secure the system can be. Now, once you set the device up for the first time, one of the apps I do recommend you use is Xfinder. This is a separate utility that you can download from QSAN's own website for your your connected machine, your PC. And once you've got it downloaded, you can search the local area network, and as long as the NAS is on the same network as the PC you're running the test on, it will appear. You can see here I found the NAS, and there's a few options open to us. We can power down the device if we want. We can have a look here and we can right click and look at different bits of information. We can have a look and log into the device if we so choose. We can look at the network settings of the device, and each of these will need you to log in. We can check about notifications, we can monitor the device, and all of these options are readily available. So if we log into the device here, we'll log in. Now, the fact that this is using self-encrypted drives means that it's not going to let us in, which is, fair and well as what I would expect from a device like this. So if we come out of there, let's have a look at the encryption systems of this disk. So if we double click there, it will open up that brand new tab. I know I had it up here. Now, if you are using self-encrypted drives on a QSAN, this is one of the cool features of the device, because if someone does steal your QSAN and they have a login to the device, if you're using self-encrypted drives, the encryption levels of the QSAN extend beyond the folders, beyond the files, and beyond the volumes to the entire system. Consequently, with self-encrypted drives installed in this device, if you boot the device up, it won't even let you get to the login screen without the encryption password. So this is what happens when you try to boot up a QSAN that may already be set up, but the self-encrypted drives are preventing you from getting in. If you go to customize setup, however, then it asks you for that self-encrypted password. Now, we're setting it up there for the first time on the system. We're not going to let it do auto unlock. We want it to be like that every time. And straight away, we can't boot this device. These drives are locked, and if we try to unlock this, it's going to ask us to select the drives. But because in my previous video we set an authentication password here, we can now unlock these drives for an extra layer of security. We move forward, it's now unlocking each of those drives. I can see the LEDs on the device clicking one by one, letting us know that the drives are now accessible, and this will allow us to get into our QSAN NAS. Once again, I apologise for the noise in the background. As you can see, the SED drives has now been unlocked, and we can access the QSM user interface. And now things have changed. Now we can get into the device. Now, the majority of NAS systems will let you get to this screen straight away from boot, which a number of you may be less than happy with. And having as many layers of security and encryption may be incredibly desirable to you. So we're going to log into the device. So we're using this over the network, although you can of course access the device over the internet. And for those that caught my initial setup video, this is already the screen that you've seen. Now, if you are used to using a QNAP or a Synology, there's no denying it. There's a lot more apps available on those platforms, and that's because they tailor to both home, prosumer, mid-range, business and big business users. With the QSAN, however, they are aiming at the very top echelon there of NAS, so you would expect a user interface like that. We can learn a lot about the device here at the information section, and of course if you set up a QSAN ID, from there you're then able to access the device over the internet and securely. Also, we can access the control panel for lots of information with regards to creating users and setting up individual security protocol. So let's have a look at a number of the settings available to us on this QSAN NAS. I'm just going to quickly check OBS is still running. Yes, it is. In the general settings here, we can change the password if we so choose. You can enable the buzzer for if there's any instances or issues. Let's test that buzzer. There you go. And you can do more. I know you're not going to be able to see this on camera, but I can tell you right now, by clicking there, it's now illuminating every LED on the device, everything from red to amber to blue to white. All the lights are being tested there. Now we can change lots of little settings here at the top, and most of these are ones that we set up right at the beginning, as well as auto logging out, login lock, so you can make sure that only one person can access the device with one connection, which I think is highly recommended, because if login information gets disseminated online and people get hold of it, that's a good way to make sure your device isn't going to be too DDoS by multiple people at once. Also, this is the bottom here to restrict certain USB accessibility. I wouldn't, but I can understand a lot of people in terms of security, and that is the big word with a QSAN. You can stop USB access as an admin, and again, that's a setting I've never seen in any other any other NAS device. Now moving forward, we can look at the network settings. For those that remember, I set this up as a static IP, but we can enable different configurations and protocol for individual accessible LAN ports. So we can access and set up, if we connect a LAN connection to one of these other ports, we can then change the configuration of that port within the system, and therefore you can set up different access protocol to different users. You can of course enable link aggregation very easily by combining individual ports, which is something that's nice and straightforward and easy, and you can change the individual protocol IPv4, IPv6 on those individual ports, and something that a lot of you, once again in terms of security and streamlined access, may take advantage of. Now, there are other ports and connections on this device. There are of course the 4.1GBE, and there is of course Thunderbolt on this device too, and that's a way in which we can take advantage over IP over Thunderbolt to take advantage of those higher speeds. But with this giving you a lot of information about testing the connections and testing quality of service reports and more, it's a nifty little backend here that's presented in maybe not the most user-friendly fashion, but definitely better than a number of devices I've seen, and I'm looking at you, Netgear. In terms of security, we've already talked about encryption. There it is on the end there, the SED encryption, and you can set it up to be automated or to edit the authentication as needed. Everything from SSL certificates for external application access, the connection list to see who's accessed and when, and configuring a number of the options with regards to outside access on the device. And if you are going to make this device internet accessible, definitely take advantage of many of the configuration options in terms of networking internet access as you possibly can. In terms of connections, DDNS service is to make sure that things are a lot more streamlined and accessible while still being safe, and it's something you can access, but you have to make sure you set up a DDNS provider, which I believe they do recommend one. Notifications, you can enable different kinds of notifications and the way you're notified about these different instances of intrusions or system difficulties to come via email or direct push notifications to different devices that are supported. It doesn't have the mobile application support of the likes of Synology and QNAP, it has to be said, but once again that's because they are covering many different types of user at once and have to divide their attention, with QSAN chiefly focusing on those business users. Standard power options, unsurprisingly, are ones where you can have the device power up, power down on scheduled or triggered fashions, as well as the ability to attach a UPS and see what happens. Hopefully we do have a UPS video incoming very soon involving this device, where we will be bench testing what happens if the device is disconnected from a power outlet but is still connected to a UPS. How does the device behave, and does the device shut itself down? And you can set it up that the device will power itself down in the event of the UPS falling off the network. It's also worth highlighting that the environment I'm in does have a UPS available, hence why there's one showing. Now, power schedules are ones where you want the device to power up, power down at certain times of the day and in business hours, and to shut itself down safely. And you can create whole schedules whereby the device will behave in the way that best fits your business without power being utilized too much, and making sure the device is completely inaccessible over the network and the internet at times when it doesn't need to be accessible at all. There's all those notifications we mentioned earlier on, along with a log that tells us lots of information about how devices, what's been accessing the device and how it's being accessed by different users, with active connections also being listed. Next, in the maintenance section, this is really just back-end stuff, and as we've already upgraded it to the very latest version of the firmware, we're not going to tinker too much on this. But if you do have the need to factory reset the device, here's where you would go. But do bear in mind that if you are using SSD drives, you're not going to be able to take advantage of this option unless you've opened up the drives completely. And then, of course, you've got system images which you can upload and download or import and export to restore the device to a different means. Now, moving forward, we can look into storage, and of course a number of these storage options are ones that you'll be familiar with. When I set up the device, we created that RAID 5 area there using the 4 drives, so we've got 1 disk of drive failure protection even, and also from here we can see that shared folder that we created, which gave us the ability to create a shared folder on the network for a mapped network drive in a future video. If we make our way back into that user interface here, we can look at the enclosure map. If we've got multiple QSAN NASs in our network connected in different varied ways, they will appear here on this map network environment, and this means that we can combine a number of these devices together, get them to share data, replicate, rsync, and more. In the disk option here, we can see each of those individual disks, and from here giving us real-time information about those drives, from serials to temperature and more. We can learn more information, we can identify the disks with a beep or an LED light, and find out lots of real-time information about the device. And I do believe Seagate's IronWolf Health user interface is supported on these, but we can perform individual tests on these disks as needed, and logs are kept. The pool is the combination of all of our storage, and from that we can create volumes and storage areas. There's our total storage available. We've of course utilised and taken a bunch of it in the volume here, and there is a varied degree of options open to us to create multiple storage areas on a single pool of RAID storage. The virtual volume allows us to create remote targets which will be visible to the system in a fashion as localized storage. This, combined with the map of your storage network as seen in that previous option, would be very advantageous and allows you to combine the storage potential of multiple QSANs on your environment. Now, you can change the way data is stored, both in terms of live data, hot and cold data of course, and backups. And if you want to change the way that happens, these are the options for you. Now, SSD cache, because there is an available SSD bay within this device, allows you to create an area of fast storage that the main RAID hard drive storage can then use to improve internal read and write speeds. If you're going to take advantage of link aggregation, 10GBE or Thunderbolt, this will be exceptionally advantageous. But when it comes to backing up from multiple sources, deduplication is super useful. With deduplication, you can then create a system where multiple copies of one file in different locations can all be combined into one. This is SSD read cache deduplication, but the ability to take advantage of deduplication within your storage array when you're backing up from multiple locations is exceptionally useful indeed. Now, performance tuning here allows you to perform some small checks within your device to improve system performance. Yes, you will need to take advantage of internal SSDs and take advantage of SSD trim, which a number of more modern SSDs do support, as well as the media streaming booster, which will improve the playback of media over the network and the internet to your client devices. With file sharing, this is where we can create multiple users. So say you're buying this device for your local area network and all of your connected users, and you've got people in different departments and people that need different privileges and rights and access to your data. This is where you go. From here, you can create multiple users very easily indeed. We can give them a name, and each of these users will have their own login to the NAS. So we can give this person test1, give them a password of the rather unimaginative password. We don't have to give an email, but we can. We can give them a storage quota of a certain amount of space. We can enable them to have that quota. Let's give this person 2 gigabytes. We can create individual groups, so we can band lots of different users together under that one umbrella. And the individual folders that we create, we can then decide how much storage we want them to have. At the moment, I've only created the one folder, But if we've created many, we can say that that user has access to those files. And then finally, you've got applications that are installed. You can tailor which apps they can use. I've not installed many of the apps, but they'd all be listed here. And you can say that this user can use that one and only that one if you so choose. And it's going to create the user now, and there you go, we've created test one, and that test one user can log into this user interface like anyone else, and will have those tailored controls that we've created. Alternatively, you can create groups, so if you're going to use departments such as sales, marketing, logistics, etc., each of those groups can be created, and then you've got an entire group that will have its own rights and permissions, and then you can just add users one by one. Nice and simple, user group, admin group, but if we create a group, much like the same way we created the user, we can then add groups one by one and create an entire access network to this NAS device. Domain security enables you to activate a number of preset security precautions, though some of them may require licenses with third parties. They'll allow you to protect your NAS in a number of ways. And once again, that's one of the things about QSAN that really stands out, those security protocols. Folders, we can create new shared folders, more network file hosts, and also monitor how drives are shared over the local area network. The original software here will give you the ability to access a number of key options within the device, and your Windows machine will find this device over the network very easily indeed. Finally, you've got network options that allow you to change the way the device interacts with different operating systems and, of course, other file systems in your local area network and communicate your data. There's a whole host of options here, some of which are completely unique to the QSAN platform. And finally, for you Mac users, you have got Time Machine support, and this allows you to store multiple Time Machine images from your Mac system onto the NAS, and all of those images will be kept for whatever amount of time that you want, as well as access. You can create a self-deleting database to make sure you're not using up too much space, but ultimately create regular timed backups of your Mac, all independent of one another. So those are the control panel options, and there's quite a lot to deal with. So from here we can have a look at some of the preset options. Down here we've got apps and tutorials, so if we go to the applications, this is where we can install other applications on this device. We haven't installed multimedia library management, but we have actually, I do take that back, we've got that installed right now. But so if we want to install SQL Server, we can enable it there in the background as one of the apps that we've installed. Because this isn't something we can compare against the likes of a Synology or QNAP, which have hundreds of applications. As this is made for business, only business apps are readily available, such as Hypervisor Manager, which allows you to synchronize the QSAN a great deal better with your pre-existing virtual machine interface, and you target the NAS for all of your storage. CloudSync allows you to synchronize with third-party cloud platforms and have an off-site backup of your QSAN NAS, with VPN servers allowing you to create another layer of protection between your data and the outside world. There are loads of options here readily available, but again, this is with business in mind. And if you are a home user, I can appreciate that you're probably watching this feeling somewhat underwhelmed. You have to understand that business users don't care about your Plex. What they care about is robust, reliable and secure storage. And apparently the QSAN is giving us all of that in spades. That said, it's not all brilliant. There are a few things that I'm not hugely impressed by. First and foremost, it is a tad underwhelming. If you've never used a NAS before, it kind of makes sense that, you know, if you compare this to just a traditional, you know, DLNA storage area, or even a USB drive, or just a large DAS storage array, this may seem very, very detailed. But compared with a number of more modern NAS infrastructures, it does leave me a little bit underwhelmed. Again, I'm looking at this with my home hat on and not my business hat, and that's clearly the main difference between them. And don't get me wrong, the support of those SSD drives cannot be understated. This is still one of the most secure NASs I've seen in a long time, and if you're someone that cares about your data and would rather spend as much as possible on a NAS that's got a multitude of layers between the outside world and your data, this one is tough to beat. But if you're looking for something for multimedia, then maybe you might want to look elsewhere. But this has been my brief software overview of QSM for the QSAD XN8008T. We'll be doing a few more things with this device as well as comparing it against competitors, so I recommend you check those out if you are on the verge of buying this device and want to stay updated on what it can do. I will see you on the next video.